The room was large, almost cavernous, with walls that shimmered faintly in hues of green and blue. The light came not from lamps or torches, but from the very material. The walls were made of bioluminescent stone that pulsed gently as though alive. High above, the ceiling stretched into darkness, broken only by thin veins of glowing crystal that ran like rivers through the rock. At the center of the room stood a raised platform, upon which sat a throne carved from black metal and adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when looked at too long. On the throne sat Princess Unji, her slender form draped in flowing robes of deep crimson embroidered with golden threads. Her eyes wide and sharp scanned the room with an air of authority so absolute it felt like a physical force. Around her, courtiers moved quietly, their insectoid bodies clicking softly as they adjusted their positions. The air smelled faintly sweet, like honey mixed with something metallic. At the far end of the room, 2 guards dragged a figure forward. It was a man, his clothes torn and dirty, his face smeared with dirt and dried blood. His hands were bound behind his back. But despite his disheveled appearance, there was something about him, a calmness in his posture, a steadiness in his gaze that set him apart. This was Jae-min, a human scientist whose ship had crash-landed on the outskirts of the Empire's territory days earlier. The guards stopped just short of the throne and forced Jae-min to his knees. One of them pressed down hard on his shoulder, trying to make him bow fully. But Jae-min resisted. He kept his head up, meeting Yunji's piercing stare without flinching. The court fell silent, the soft hum of conversation dying away as everyone turned to watch. Yunji leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on one hand. Her lips curled into a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "So," she said, her voice smooth and clear, carrying easily across the vast chamber. "This is the creature we've heard so much about." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "A human, a lesser being who dares trespass into our domain." Jae-min said nothing. His expression remained neutral, neither defiant nor submissive. Yunji tilted her head, studying him closely. "You must know why you're here," she continued. "Your kind has always been weak, always dependent on others for survival. Yet somehow, you managed to build ships capable of traveling between stars. Tell me, how did someone like you achieve such a thing?" Still, Jae-min did not respond. He simply looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. Yunji frowned, irritation flickering briefly across her face. She wasn't used to being ignored. Rising gracefully from her throne, she descended the steps until she stood directly in front of him. Up close, she could see the fine lines of exhaustion etched into his skin, the slight tremor in his muscles caused by fatigue. But even then, he didn't break eye contact. "You should beg," she said softly, her tone almost conversational. "Beg for your life. Plead for mercy. I may yet spare you if you prove yourself worthy." For the first time, Jae-min spoke. His voice was low but steady, carrying no trace of fear. "I don't beg," he said simply. A ripple of murmurs spread through the court. Some of the courtiers shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged glances, unsure how to react. Unji's frown deepened. She had expected anger, desperation, perhaps even tears. Anything but this quiet defiance. "Interesting," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Then, louder, she added, "Do you think your silence will save you? You are nothing here. Less than nothing. My people could crush you in an instant if I gave the command." "I don't doubt it," Jae-min replied. "But strength isn't measured by how easily you can destroy someone. True strength comes from understanding, not domination." Yunji blinked, caught off guard by his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Most beings in her presence groveled or stammered, eager to please. This human, however, seemed utterly unimpressed by her power. She straightened, regaining her composure. "Take him away," she ordered, waving a dismissive hand. "Put him in the labs. Let our scientists study him." Perhaps they'll uncover what makes him so peculiar. As the guards hauled Jaemin to his feet and began dragging him toward the exit, Eunji watched him go, her thoughts swirling. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite place that intrigued her. For now, she decided, she would let the scientists do their work. But she resolved to keep a close eye on him. In the days that followed, Jaemin was taken to a sterile, brightly lit laboratory where alien researchers poked and prodded him, running tests and asking endless questions. They strapped him to tables, scanned his body with strange machines, and injected him with substances that made his vision blur and his head spin. Through it all, he endured silently, never giving them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Meanwhile, Eunji visited the lab often, observing from behind a glass partition. She listened as the scientists reported their findings, noting every detail about Jaemin's physiology and behavior. Yet despite the data they collected, none of it explained the quiet confidence that radiated from him. One evening, after most of the researchers had left, Eunji entered the lab herself. Jaemin lay on a metal table, his arms crossed over his chest, staring up at the ceiling. When he noticed her approach, he turned his head slightly, acknowledging her presence without saying a word. "You're different from the others," Eunji said, finally, breaking the silence. Jaemin raised an eyebrow. "Different how? You don't scream. You don't cry. You don't even try to resist. Why is that?" 2. He shrugged as best he could while lying down. "What would be the point? Screaming won't change anything. Crying won't make you let me go. And resisting—" He trailed off, smirking faintly. "Well, I'm outnumbered. Fighting back would only get me killed faster." Eunji narrowed her eyes. "Is that all? Or is there more to it?" Jaemin sighed, shifting slightly on the cold surface of the table. "Maybe I just know something you don't." "Oh?" Eunji stepped closer, curiosity getting the better of her. "And what might that be?" "That no matter how powerful you think you are, true freedom comes from within. You can lock me up, run your tests, do whatever you want, but you'll never truly control me, unless I let you." Eunji stared at him, her mind racing. She wanted to argue, to refute his claim, but deep down, she knew he was right. There was a strength in him that went beyond physical resistance, a strength she couldn't touch. For the first time in her life, Princess Eunji felt uncertain, and that uncertainty gnawed at her, driving her to return to the lab again and again, hoping to unravel the mystery of the human who refused to beg. The lab was cold and sterile, its walls lined with smooth metal panels that reflected the harsh white light from overhead. Machines hummed softly, their screens displaying streams of data in glowing green text. Tubes and wires snaked across the floor, connecting various devices to Jaemin's body as he lay on a narrow cot in the corner. His hands were still bound, though not as tightly now, and his face bore the marks of exhaustion. Despite this, there was no hint of surrender in his eyes. Every day, researchers came and went, conducting tests and asking questions. They poked him with needles, scanned his brain with strange machines, and recorded every twitch of his muscles. But Jaemin remained silent, giving them only vague answers when they pressed him for information about Earth's technology. He kept his responses simple, careful not to reveal too much. Princess Eunji visited often, sometimes alone, sometimes with her advisors trailing behind her. She watched through the glass partition, observing the experiments with a mixture of fascination and frustration. The scientists reported their findings to her eagerly, explaining how human biology differed from theirs, how humans were weaker, slower, more fragile. But none of it explained why Jaemin refused to break. None of it answered the question that gnawed at her. Why didn't he beg? One evening, after most of the researchers had left, Eunji entered the lab herself. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, sharp and unpleasant. Jaemin sat up on the cot, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest. He glanced at her briefly before looking away, seemingly uninterested in her presence. You're wasting your time, he said without preamble. Unji raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? These tests. This place. It's all pointless. He gestured vaguely at the machines around him. You think poking me with needles will make me spill my secrets? You're wrong. Unji frowned. Then, what would make you talk? Jaemin smirked faintly. Nothing. Not unless I want to. His confidence infuriated her. How could someone so powerless act so superior? She stepped closer, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. You're in no position to negotiate, she snapped. You're a prisoner here. My prisoner. True, Jaemin admitted. But you forget something important. You can lock me up, torture me, do whatever you want, but you'll never own my mind. That's mine to keep. Unji clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. She hated being challenged, especially by someone like him. Fine, she said coolly. Fine, she said. Fine, she said coolly. If you won't give us answers willingly, maybe we'll find another way. She turned and walked out of the lab, leaving Jaemin alone once again. As the door slid shut behind her, he let out a quiet sigh. For all his bravado, he knew he couldn't hold out forever. Sooner or later, they'd wear him down, or worse. But until then, he resolved to fight back, in his own way. Over the next few days, small things began to go wrong in the lab. A machine would malfunction just as it started recording data. Lights would flicker and dim unexpectedly. Once, an entire bank of computers crashed, erasing hours of research. At first, the scientists dismissed these incidents as technical glitches. But as they grew more frequent, suspicion began to spread. Jaemin noticed the changes too. He didn't say anything, but he couldn't help feeling a sense of satisfaction each time something broke. He hadn't caused the problems directly, not exactly, but he'd learned enough during his captivity to exploit weaknesses in the system. By subtly adjusting settings or tampering with equipment when no one was looking, he managed to create chaos without drawing attention to himself. Unji, however, wasn't fooled. She returned to the lab one afternoon, her expression grim. The head researcher, a tall insectoid creature named Kale, approached her nervously, clutching a datapad. Your Highness, Kale stammered. We've encountered complications. What kind of complications? Unji asked sharply. Kale hesitated before replying. Several pieces of equipment have failed recently. We suspect sabotage. Unji's gaze shifted to Jaemin, who sat quietly on his cot, pretending not to listen. Sabotage, she repeated slowly. And who might be responsible? 2. Kale glanced at Jaemin as well, lowering his voice. We believe it could be him. He's clever, Your Highness. Perhaps too clever. Unji nodded thoughtfully. I see. Leave me with him. Once Kale and the other researchers had left, Unji approached Jaemin. She stopped a few feet away, studying him intently. You've been busy, she said, finally. Jaemin shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Unji snapped. You've been causing trouble in here. Those machines breaking down? The lights flickering? That's your doing, isn't it? Jaemin met her gaze evenly. Even if it is, what are you going to do about it? Lock me up tighter? Torture me some more? Go ahead. See if it makes a difference. For a moment, Unji said nothing. She felt anger rising within her. But beneath it was something else, a grudging respect. Despite everything, Jaemin continued to defy her, refusing to bow even when faced with overwhelming odds. It was infuriating, and yet, somehow, admirable. Why do you resist? She asked suddenly. You must know there's no escape for you. No hope of rescue. Why bother fighting? Jaemin smiled faintly. Because it's the right thing to do. Because giving up means letting you win. And because, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because freedom isn't just about where you are. It's about who you are. Even here. Even like this. I'm still free. You can't take that away from me. Yoonji stared at him, her thoughts racing. She'd spent her entire life believing in the superiority of her people, their strength, their intelligence, their dominance over lesser species. Yet here was a human, weak and outnumbered, proving her wrong at every turn. Was he truly inferior? Or had she been blind to the truth all along? Before she could respond, the door to the lab slid open, and a young alien worker hurried inside. Her name was Haijin, a lower-class citizen tasked with maintaining the lab's equipment. She froze when she saw Eunji, clearly startled by the princess's presence. "Your Highness," Haijin stammered, bowing deeply. "Forgive the interruption. I was sent to repair the lighting system." Yoonji waved her forward impatiently. "Get to work." Then, as Haejin moved past her, Jaemin caught the worker's eye. There was something in her expression, a flicker of sympathy, perhaps, or recognition. He didn't react outwardly, but inwardly, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he thought. The underground tunnels beneath the palace were dark and damp, their walls lined with rough stone that glistened faintly in the dim light. The air smelled of earth and metal, thick enough to make breathing feel heavy. For Haejin, these tunnels were a familiar part of her daily routine. She worked tirelessly, maintaining the pipes and conduits that kept the palace running smoothly. To most, she was invisible, a lowly worker, unworthy of notice. But to Jaemin, she was becoming something far more important. An ally. It started subtly. During one of her visits to the lab, Haejin lingered longer than necessary, pretending to adjust equipment while sneaking glances at Jaemin. Their eyes met briefly, and though neither spoke, a silent understanding passed between them. Over time, their interactions grew bolder. When no one was watching, Haejin would slip small items into Jaemin's reach, a piece of wire, a loose screw, anything that might help him in his quiet rebellion against the system. Jaemin didn't trust her immediately. He knew better than to let his guard down, even for someone who seemed kind. But as days turned into weeks, Haejin proved herself reliable. She brought him scraps of food when the guards weren't looking, whispered updates about palace security, and shared stories of her own struggles as a member of the lower class. Slowly, Jaemin began to see her not just as a helper, but as a partner in his fight for freedom. One evening, after the researchers had left and the lab was quiet, Haejin approached Jaemin cautiously. She carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth, which she placed on the edge of his cot before glancing nervously toward the door. "This is for you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've been saving it." Jaemin unfolded the cloth to reveal a thin blade, its surface dulled from years of use, but still sharp enough to cut through rope. He looked up at her, surprised. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. Haejin hesitated, her antennae twitching nervously. "Because I'm tired of living like this," she admitted. "Tired of being stepped on, ignored, treated like I'm nothing. You're different. You stand up to them. And maybe, if you can escape, it'll give others hope." Jaemin nodded slowly, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Thank you," he said simply. "But escaping won't be easy." "I know," Haejin replied. "That's why I've been thinking about it. There's a festival coming up soon, the Empire Day celebration. The whole palace will be busy with preparations. If we time it right, we might be able to get you out unnoticed." Jaemin considered her words carefully. It was risky, but it was also their best chance. "Tell me more," he said. Meanwhile, Princess Yoonji found herself increasingly conflicted. Her visits to the lab had become less frequent, yet her thoughts often returned to Jaemin. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was slipping away from her, not physically, but mentally. Every act of defiance, every clever trick he pulled, chipped away at her certainty. Who was this human, and why did he refuse to submit? Her advisors noticed the change in her demeanor. They whispered among themselves, speculating about what might be troubling their princess. Some suggested she was growing too attached to the prisoner, while others warned that his continued presence posed a threat to the empire's stability. Unji dismissed their concerns, but deep down, she knew they were right. Something had to be done. She decided to confront Jaemin once more, hoping to find answers or perhaps closure. Entering the lab late one night, she found him sitting cross-legged on his cot, examining the blade He-Jin had smuggled to him. His expression darkened when he saw her, and he quickly concealed the weapon beneath the blanket. "You're planning something," Unji said bluntly, her tone accusatory. Jaemin shrugged, feigning indifference. "Planning what? Don't play games with me," she snapped. "I know you're up to something. Sabotaging equipment. Causing disruptions. Now this." She gestured toward the hidden blade. "What are you trying to achieve?" Jaemin met her gaze steadily. "Freedom," he said simply. "Isn't that obvious?" "No." Unji clenched her fists, frustration bubbling within her. "You think running away will solve anything? You're one person against an entire empire. What difference can you possibly make?" "A big one," Jaemin replied. "Sometimes all it takes is one spark to start a fire." His words struck a chord in her, stirring emotions she didn't fully understand. Was he right? Could a single act of defiance truly ignite change? Or was he merely deluding himself? Before she could respond, the door to the lab slid open, and a guard entered, saluting sharply. "Your Highness," he said, "there's been a report of suspicious activity in the maintenance tunnels. We believe it may be connected to the prisoner." Yunji's heart sank. Suspicious activity? Could He-Jin's involvement have been discovered? She glanced at Jaemin, who remained impassive, giving nothing away. "Investigate further," she ordered the guard. "And double the security around the lab." As the guard left, Unji turned back to Jaemin, her expression unreadable. "If you try to escape, I'll stop you," she said firmly. "No matter what it takes." Jaemin smiled faintly. "We'll see." The day of the festival arrived, bringing with it a flurry of activity throughout the palace. Decorations adorned every corridor, glowing lanterns casting colorful patterns on the walls. Music drifted through the air, accompanied by the hum of excited chatter. Guards were stationed at key points, but their attention was divided, distracted by the festivities. In the lab, Jaemin waited patiently, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. He-Jin had promised to meet him in the tunnels during the height of the celebration, where they would put their plan into motion. All he needed was the right moment to slip away, unnoticed. Finally, the opportunity came. A group of researchers left the lab together, eager to join the revelry outside. As the last of them disappeared around the corner, Jaemin made his move. Using the blade, he cut through his bindings and slipped out of the room, moving swiftly and silently through the shadows. He reached the entrance to the tunnels without incident, blending into the crowd of workers, rushing to complete last-minute tasks. Once inside, he followed the winding passages, guided by the faint sound of dripping water and the occasional flicker of bioluminescent moss. After what felt like hours, he spotted He-Jin waiting for him near a junction, her face tense with anticipation. "You made it," she whispered, relief washing over her. "For now," Jaemin replied. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, avoiding patrols and staying alert for any signs of danger. He-Jin led the way, her knowledge of the underground network proving invaluable. They encountered obstacles along the way, locked doors, collapsed sections, but Jaemin's resourcefulness helped them overcome each challenge. At last, they reached the edge of the tunnel system, where a narrow opening led to the surface. Fresh air wafted through the crack, carrying with it the scent of grass and soil. Freedom was so close, Jaemin could almost taste it. But as they prepared to climb out, a voice rang out behind them. "Going somewhere?" Jaemin froze, recognizing the speaker instantly. Turning slowly, he saw Unji standing at the mouth of the tunnel, flanked by two guards. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of anger, sadness, and something else he couldn't quite place. "I thought you'd come here eventually," she said quietly. "I underestimated you." Jaemin took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "It doesn't have to end like this," he said. "Let me go. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something valuable from all of this." Yoonji hesitated, her grip tightening on the weapon in her hand. For a brief moment, it seemed as though she might relent, but then she shook her head, steeling herself. "I can't let you leave," she said firmly. "Not yet." Haejin stepped forward, placing herself between Jaemin and the guards. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me first," she declared, her voice trembling but resolute. The standoff hung in the air, tension crackling like electricity. Then, without warning, Jaemin sprang into action, using the element of surprise to disarm one of the guards and create chaos. In the confusion, he grabbed Haejin's hand and bolted for the exit, leaving Eunji staring after them, torn between duty and doubt. The air outside was cool and crisp, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming flowers. Jaemin and Haejin emerged from the tunnel into a secluded grove, surrounded by tall trees. Their escape had been narrow, but they had made it for now. Both were breathing heavily, their bodies trembling from the adrenaline coursing through them. Jaemin glanced back at the tunnel entrance, half expecting Yoonji and her guards to appear at any moment. But for the time being, they were alone. The sounds of the festival still echoed in the distance, muffled by the thick foliage that shielded them from view. "We need to keep moving," Jaemin said, his voice low but urgent. "They'll be after us soon." Haejin nodded, though her face was pale with fear. "There's a path ahead that leads to the outer wall," she explained. "If we can reach it before they catch up, we might have a chance." Without another word, they began running, their footsteps crunching softly against the forest floor. The moonlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the ground. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig made them flinch, fearing discovery. But they pressed on, driven by desperation. Behind them, chaos erupted within the palace. Yoonji stood frozen at the tunnel exit, watching as Jaemin disappeared into the night. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions, anger at his defiance, admiration for his courage, and an unsettling sense of loss. She clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging into her palms. "Your Highness," one of the guards called out, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Shall we pursue?" Yoonji hesitated, torn between duty and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Finally, she nodded curtly. "Yes. Bring him back." Meanwhile, Jaemin and Haejin reached the outer wall, a towering structure made of smooth stone that gleamed faintly under the moonlight. A guard post loomed nearby, its occupants distracted by the distant celebrations. Haejin gestured toward a service gate, partially hidden by vines. "That's our way out," she whispered. "But it's locked. We'll need to disable the mechanism." Jaemin examined the gate, spotting a small control panel embedded in the wall. He pulled out the blade Haejin had given him earlier and carefully pried open the panel cover. Inside, wires of various colors were neatly arranged, pulsing faintly with energy. "Which one do I cut?" he asked quietly. Haejin leaned closer, her antennae twitching as she studied the wiring. "The blue one," she said after a moment. "It controls the lock." Jaemin nodded and cut the wire. There was a soft click, and the gate creaked open just wide enough for them to slip through. They exchanged a quick glance, relief washing over them as they stepped outside the palace grounds for the first time. Freedom stretched before them, an endless expanse of rolling hills and starlit skies. But they knew better than to celebrate too soon. The Empire wouldn't give up so easily. As they moved further away from the palace, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Shouts echoed in the distance, accompanied by the rhythmic pounding of boots against the ground. Haejin glanced over her shoulder, panic rising in her chest. "They're coming," she gasped, Keep going, Jae-min urged, gripping her hand firmly. We're almost there. Ahead, they could see the faint outline of a ship, a battered vessel half buried in the dirt. It was Jaemin's crashed spacecraft, repaired just enough to function thanks to his earlier efforts in the lab. If they could reach it in time, they might stand a chance of escaping the planet entirely. But fate had other plans. As they neared the ship, a group of guards appeared suddenly, cutting off their path. Behind them, Yoonji emerged, her expression unreadable as she approached slowly. Her presence commanded attention, silencing the guards who parted to let her pass. "It's over," she said simply, her voice calm but firm. "You can't run anymore." 2. Jaemin stopped, pulling Haejin behind him protectively. His eyes met Eunji's, searching for some sign of weakness or doubt. But all he found was resolve. "You don't understand," he said, his tone steady despite the tension in the air. "This isn't about running. It's about choosing. You can keep chasing me, trying to hold on to your power, but it won't change anything. True strength comes from understanding, not domination." Yoonji faltered, her mask slipping slightly. For a moment, she looked uncertain, as if his words had struck a nerve. But then, she straightened, steeling herself once more. "I've heard enough," she snapped. "Take him." The guards moved forward, weapons drawn. Jae-min tightened his grip on the blade, ready to fight if necessary. But before the situation could escalate further, Haejin stepped forward, placing herself between Jae-min and the advancing guards. "No." Yoonji's gaze shifted to Haejin, her expression softening ever so slightly. "Step aside," she ordered. "This doesn't concern you." "It does," Haejin insisted, tears streaming down her face. "He showed me what it means to stand up for yourself, to fight for what's right. If you take him away, you're taking away hope. Not just for me, but for everyone like me." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with emotion. Even the guards seemed unsure of what to do next. Yoonji stared at Haejin, her mind racing. She had always believed in the superiority of her people, in the natural order of things. But now, faced with the raw determination of two individuals, one human, one alien, she began to question everything she thought she knew. Finally, she lowered her weapon. "Go," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Leave this place, and never come back." Jae-min blinked, startled by her sudden change of heart. "Why are you letting us go?" he asked cautiously. Yoonji didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. "Because maybe you're right," she admitted. "Maybe strength isn't about control. Maybe it's about trust, about believing in others enough to let them make their own choices." With that, she stepped back, signaling to the guards to stand down. Jae-min hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust her. But when she made no move to stop them, he nodded briefly in gratitude and ushered Haejin toward the ship. As the engines roared to life and the vessel lifted off the ground, Jae-min looked out the window at the shrinking figure of Yoonji standing alone in the field. Her silhouette was framed by the rising sun, a symbol of both endings and beginnings. Once they were safely in orbit, Haejin sank into a seat, exhaling deeply. "Do you think she meant it?" she asked quietly. "Do you think she'll really change?" Jae-min didn't respond right away. He gazed out at the vast expanse of stars, his thoughts drifting to the Princess Queen who had let him go. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I hope so. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to start making a difference." And with that, the ship disappeared into the void, leaving behind a world and a ruler who would never be the same again. Months had passed since Jaemin's escape, and the galaxy seemed vast and quiet in his absence. The ship he piloted now moved silently through the endless void, its engines humming softly as it carried him back toward Earth. Haejin sat beside him, her insectoid features illuminated faintly by the glow of the control panel. She had insisted on accompanying him, unwilling to return to a life of servitude after everything they had been through together. Jaemin glanced at her occasionally, noting the way she studied the stars with wide, curious eyes. For someone who had spent most of her life trapped beneath the palace grounds, space must have felt like an impossible dream come true. He smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride not just for himself, but for the courage she had shown in choosing freedom over fear. But even as they traveled, Jaemin couldn't shake the memory of Eunji standing alone in that field, watching them leave. Her final words echoed in his mind. Maybe strength isn't about control. Maybe it's about trust. Had she truly meant them? Or had she simply been trying to ease her conscience before letting them go? He didn't know, and perhaps he never would. Back on the alien empire's home planet, things were changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, cracks began to form in the rigid structure of society. Rumors spread among the lower classes about the human who had defied the Princess Queen. Stories of his bravery inspired whispers of rebellion, fueling discontent among those who had long suffered under the rule of the elite. Eunji herself was not immune to these shifts. Since Jaemin's departure, she had thrown herself into her duties, attempting to distract herself from the questions that plagued her thoughts. Yet, no matter how busy she kept herself, she couldn't escape the memories of their encounters, the calm defiance in his gaze, the quiet conviction in his voice. One evening, she stood alone on the balcony of her chambers, gazing out at the city below. The bioluminescent spires pulsed gently, casting soft waves of light across the skyline. It was beautiful, yes, but also suffocating. For the first time, Eunji realized how much the weight of tradition constrained her people, stifling innovation and progress in favor of maintaining the status quo. She thought back to Jaemin's parting message. True strength comes from understanding, not domination. At the time, she had dismissed it as idealistic nonsense. But now, surrounded by the opulence of her empire, she wondered if there wasn't some truth to his words. What if her people's obsession with power had blinded them to the value of cooperation? What if the key to lasting peace lay not in conquest, but in connection? Determined to find answers, Eunji began implementing small reforms within the palace. She started by loosening restrictions on the lower classes, granting them greater access to education and resources. When advisors protested, arguing that such changes would weaken the empire, she silenced them with a simple declaration. Strength is not measured by how tightly we hold on to control, but by how willing we are to share it. Her actions sparked mixed reactions. Some praised her boldness, seeing it as a sign of hope for the future. Others resisted, clinging to old ways out of fear or habit. But Eunji pressed on, undeterred. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and setbacks. But she also knew that change was necessary, if not for her sake, then for the sake of generations to come. Meanwhile, Jaemin and Haejin reached Earth, landing on a remote stretch of coastline where the ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The air smelled of salt and seaweed, crisp and invigorating after months in the sterile confines of the ship. As they stepped onto the sandy beach, Haejin marveled at the sight of the sun setting over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "It's beautiful," she said softly, her antennae twitching in awe. Jaemin nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "It is," he agreed. "But it's also fragile. We'll need to prepare both for what happens next, and for whatever might follow." Jaemin. All some. 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 All. Haejin looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" I mean this isn't the end," Jaemin explained. "The Empire will recover from my escape. They'll regroup, rebuild, and eventually, they'll seek us out again. If we're going to protect ourselves and others, we'll need to be ready." Over the following weeks, Jaemin worked tirelessly to establish a base of operations. Using the knowledge he had gained during his captivity, He designed new technologies capable of countering the Empire's advanced systems. Hai-Jin assisted him, her expertise in maintenance proving invaluable as they built defenses and prepared for potential conflict. Word of their efforts spread quickly, drawing attention from scientists, engineers, and diplomats alike. Soon, a coalition began to form a diverse group, united by a shared desire to foster understanding between species rather than perpetuate cycles of hostility. Jae-min became a central figure in this movement, his experiences shaping strategies aimed at promoting diplomacy and mutual respect. Yet, despite his growing influence, Jae-min remained humble. He understood that true leadership wasn't about wielding power. It was about empowering others. And so, he encouraged collaboration, ensuring that every voice was heard and valued. As time went on, news of Eunji's reforms reached Earth, carried by traders and explorers who traversed the stars. Reports described a shifting empire, one that was beginning to question its own identity, grappling with the tension between tradition and progress. Some hailed Eunji as a visionary, while others condemned her as a traitor to her people. But regardless of opinion, one thing was clear: the seeds of change had been planted, and there was no turning back. Jae-min followed these developments closely, often wondering what role Eunji would play in shaping the empire's future. Would she continue down the path of reform, risking everything to create a better world? Or would pressure from traditionalists force her to abandon her ideals? He didn't know, and perhaps he never would. Still, he held on to hope. Hope that someday, humanity and the alien empire might meet not as enemies, but as equals. Hope that understanding could triumph over fear. And hope that, somewhere out there, Eunji was still fighting for the same vision he believed in. One night, as Jae-min stood on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, he allowed himself to imagine what might happen if their paths crossed again. Would they face each other as allies or adversaries? Only time would tell. For now, though, he focused on the present, determined to build a foundation strong enough to withstand whatever challenges lay ahead. With Hai-Jin by his side and a growing network of supporters behind him, Jae-min felt ready to face the unknown. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, two worlds continued along separate yet parallel journeys, each shaped by the choices of those brave enough to defy convention and embrace the possibility of change.